This video will cover special right triangles, specifically 45, 45, 90 triangles. Let's start with how the formula works. This is an isosceles right triangle, given that it has a 90-degree angle and two sides that are congruent. Let's use the Pythagorean theorem to show what y is if we know what x is. Let's start with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Let's combine like terms by adding the coefficients. And we want to solve for y, so we need to get rid of my y squared. I need to undo it by square rooting. When we square root this, you've learned this in algebra, and we'll learn this a little more in depth in Algebra 2. But when I take the square root of x squared, I get a plain x. And I cannot square root the 2 because it comes out to a decimal, and I want them in simplest radical form. So, this shows our new formula. I can find the length of my hypotenuse by taking my leg times root 2. So I've made a little chart here. It looks like a tic-tac-toe board. I put in what type of triangle it is, 45, 45, 90, and I put in the lengths of the legs. Notice that this is a 45, 45, 90. Opposite of the 45 is my x, and opposite of this 45 is my x. We're going to call that L for the legs of an isosceles right triangle. L, L, and then opposite of my 90 is my hypotenuse, which will always be the length of my leg times root 2. Let's try some examples. Example 1a. I notice that I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, so I'm going to use the new formula we learned in the previous page. I know that my legs are both 9, so I can fill in the 9s. I know my hypotenuse is labeled with an H. Next, I am going to use the formula I just learned in the previous slide. The hypotenuse is equal to the leg times root 2. Notice I wrote it with words this time instead of the L's. Now, all I do is plug in what I know. My hypotenuse is opposite of my 90, is my H, and that's going to equal 9 root 2. We leave our answer like this because 2 cannot be broken down and we do not want decimals. Let's try letter B. Again, I have a 45, 45, 90, so I'll have the same formulas from before. My L this time is 2 root 2, so that means my other L is the same, and x is my hypotenuse. Now that I've transferred everything into my tic-tac-toe board, I can use the formula. Hypotenuse equals leg times root 2. X equals 2 root 2 times root 2. Notice this is my leg brought straight down and my root 2 from the formula brought straight down. Next, I'm going to go ahead and multiply the root 2 times the root 2, because we know the root 2 times root 2 is the root of 4, which is 2. So now I have 2 times 2, which gives me 4. Both of these examples had us find our hypotenuse when we knew both our legs. Now we're going to try one where we know the hypotenuse and we don't know our legs. What kind of triangle? So we bring down our formulas. In this case, we have x is a leg and 6 is our hypotenuse. We're going to use our formula, hypotenuse equals leg times root 2, to plug in what we know. The hypotenuse is 6, our leg is x. Now, we need to isolate the x by solving, so that means I need to get rid of this multiplication by root 2 and divide by the root of 2 on both sides. The right side simplifies very nicely because the root 2's cancel out and leave me with an x. But now I'm left with a 6 radical 2, which I cannot leave as my answer. I cannot have a radical 2 in the denominator. So we're going to go over something we've gone over before, simplifying radicals, and there's been a video previous to this that you can watch again. I'm going to bring it up here and say that I need to rationalize this. What we learned was when you get rid of the radical in the bottom, and if I multiply radical 2 by radical 2, it'll leave me with a plain 2. So that's what I'm going to do. multiply across the top, that means I squish them together, and multiply across the bottom, which gives me a plain 2. Only one step left. I can divide out a 2, both top and bottom of my coefficients, and that gives me 3 root 2. Look for my next video about the 30, 60, 90.